Now, back to more of Behind the Scenes at the Hanover Theater. And your host, Lisa Condit.
Thank you for listening once again. As we continue our conversation with our Volunteer of the Year, Richard LaPlant, we've been talking about the plaza. He really is the force behind the gardening committee, and he's been talking about the fountain and the restoration of the fountain, and I think we were about to get into some of the financing.
Yes, that's an interesting story. When we first started, we knew that there was no money available to us. And so we had to fly by the seat of our pants, so to speak. You see, there are a lot of people today that still believe that a definition of a gardener is someone that digs a hole in the ground, throws in some seeds, covers it up, waters it, and says, "Okay, God, the rest is up to you." Okay?
That's my style. You mean that's not the way we're supposed to do it?
That's not the way we're supposed to do it. But God, being very busy, created legions of angels to do the heavy lifting.
That's for sure.
But today, they're called volunteers.
Yes, they are.
Okay. So at one of our initial meetings, we discussed how are we going to raise money, and we come up with all kinds of harebrained ideas, you know.
What were some of those ideas?
Well, one of them was in the fall we were going to sell poinsettias.
I bought poinsettias from you guys.
Yeah, well, I think we made $14 on that idea. So we were talking, and one of our early volunteers said, "I will match dollar for dollar all the money raised by the volunteers." So what he really was saying is, this is a volunteer problem, and it's going to be solved by the volunteers. So all the volunteers, and there were by that time about 150, they kicked in close to $600. So he matched it. So
Wow.
we had our seed money, $1,200.
That's great.
Right. Now, one of the volunteers was a crew chief. He's also an usher there. So he was 5 minutes late for one of our early meetings.
Uh-oh.
So in his absence, we voted him in to be our crew chief.
Perfect.
Absolutely. But his employer heard of our plight, and they donated $1,000, $500 for the gardening committee, and $500 to the theater to benefit the volunteers.
Awesome.
So that, and we made it stretch, because between the donated flowers, and a lot of members had gardens, and they donated some of their things. So we did it, and it didn't cost the theater anything, and technically it didn't cost the city anything. We saved the city countless thousands of dollars.
Absolutely. You know, if we had this kind of problem solving worldwide, can you even imagine? We'd be planting gardens and eating our food, and everybody be feeling good.
I know. But we did our first segment at the point. In other words, we put in boxwoods, and we put in Hughes, and we put in about 40 hostas. That's after we dug up 40 hostas. But we donated those to people that wanted them. And this spring, we're going to finish. We're going to be putting all perennials around the fountain. And they're designed to flower for 3 seasons. Some will flower in the spring, some will flower in the summer, and of course the rest will be in the fall. And that will reduce the maintenance and the number of hours required. Because don't forget, people don't realize there's no water
Right.
at that park.
No.
We have to run 200 feet of hose from the Hanover Theater across Southbridge Street.
And you do
water.
that regularly. How often are you watering out there? In the summer, it seems like it's almost every day.
We water minimum 3 hours, 3 days a week, 2 hours at a shot.
Yeah.
Because we have to go from the courthouse to the point. It's quite a large area.
It is. About how many square feet do you think that is?
I have no idea. But when you're standing here with a hose for 2 hours, it's big.
Yes, I'd say. And I think that you'd feel good knowing that sometimes when we look over at that plaza, we see people having their photographs taken. That's become a photo stop for people, whether it's on special occasions like a wedding or a prom, and it's really something. You've totally transformed that space.
We have almost as many people taking wedding pictures there than Elm Park.
Really?
But now with $2 million in Elm Park, that's going to be a beautiful place. But they just love it. They just put the bride and the groom in front of that caner, and they just take the pictures, and people love it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you know what? We befriended the street people, and it's amazing when
Tell us how you did that.
Be nice to them.
Be nice to them.
Being nice to them. If they would sit down and smoke, and I caught them throwing the cigarette butts on the sidewalk, I would just say, could you possibly throw them in the street? Because see, there's a street sweeper every night that comes in, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning and sweeps all those streets. So I just tell them, just throw them out there, and they say okay, there's no problem. And if you're nice to them, there's been one man that he was sitting in front of the theater, sitting by the window there.
I know exactly who you're talking about.
And he'd have his coffee and his sandwich, and he'd just drop the paper there and just walk away. And I said, I appreciate this, but there's a bucket right there. You think you could possibly go over there? And I was nice to him, and he complied. And one day, I saw this woman sitting there. A lot of people now have their lunches at the monument. They sit on the stairs.
That's right.
With no benches. And this woman was there, and I had just policed the area, maybe a half an hour. And she was sitting there, and I was watching her. She was peeling a hard-boiled egg. And every piece she was taking off, she was throwing on the ground. And I could feel the blood behind my neck going up, So I waited till she was done. So I walked up and I said, excuse me. I said, why are you doing this? I just got through policing it. Oh, she says, I'm feeding the pigeons.
With the eggshells?
With the eggshells. And I said, this.
Let them eat eggshells.
So I said, there's 2 things we don't want here. We don't want eggshells, and we don't want to feed the pigeons, because pigeons are like sky rats. You feed them, they talk to each other. They're going to start coming, and they make a mess. That woman went down, and she picked up every single piece of eggshell and apologized.
Good for you. Good for you.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah. And
don't be a litter bug.
And in 5 years, in that location, we have only lost 3 plants from people actually pulling them up. 3 in 5 years. That is amazing.
That is pretty good.
Amazing.
I'm still shocked that people pull up the plants.
Well,
in other areas, do they?
After some of the shows that where too much beer is consumed,
it's the wild and crazy bunch at the theater.
They don't steal them. I mean, they pull them up. So we just replant them. No big deal. But there was one funny story. We were all there planting the spring flowers. There must have been 12 of us. And they were also having a 5K race to raise money for a good cause. And the runners were supposed to come up Southbridge Street, and then where it meets Main Street, then cross over and then head up to Elm Street. This one woman, for some reason, decided to run right through the flowers we planted.
Right in front of you?
Right there. So I voiced my opinion to her actions. and everybody was stunned, How could she even think of this? I don't mind if it was a 2-mile shortcut, but what could she say, 15 feet? She just ran right through the flowers, bing, bang, and flattened them out and kept going. So, that's human nature. People do things like that.
Minority, though, in this case. It seems like there's been overwhelming support for what you're doing with the gardening committee and the volunteers in general. Honestly, I feel like our volunteers are one of the most beloved groups in Worcester. Our board of directors loves you. Our staff loves you. Our patrons love you. We all realize what you really contribute. And it's not that you're not getting paid because you're worthless. It's because you're priceless. And the fact is we would never be able to afford to pay everybody who volunteers for us what you're truly worth. We would never be able to afford to pay somebody to restore that plaza. We have to worry about restoring our building and maintaining that. And you raised some good points too about beautiful things need to be maintained. They need care, they need love, they need attention, and it needs to be consistent. And we're so grateful to you that you have given that patient, consistent care and effort and commitment, and you've brought other people into your crusade to save and beautify that plaza.
Well, so is it true, my understanding, that if the theater had to pay the 250 volunteers, that it would be close to $2 million we
yes,
saved the theater?
That is exactly right. And that is a huge savings. We wouldn't be able to do it. So our patrons would not have the experience that they have. That is for sure. Now, Richard, I'm sure that you have some final thoughts with other volunteers that you want to recognize. So everybody hold on one more second. We're going to go to a quick break, and then we're going to finish our conversation with Richard LaPlant after that here on Behind the Scenes at the Hanover Theater on AM 830 WCRN.
Now, back to more of Behind the Scenes at the Hanover Theater and your host, Lisa Condon.
Welcome back to what has been one of my absolute favorite hours here on Behind the Scenes at the Hanover Theater. We have been talking with Richard LaPlant, who has been honored as our 2013 Volunteer of the Year at our recent annual meeting. I had the pleasure of dining with Richard and his wife Barbara, both volunteers at the Hanover Theater since the early days. Before we opened, they were there training. You talked a little bit about that. So welcome back, Richard.
Oh, thank you, Lisa.
So one of the things when we were talking at the dinner, I said to your wife, who is just one of the most charming ladies, and everybody has such an interesting history that volunteers with the Hanover Theater, and the richness of everybody's history just really informs their actions as volunteers, and we benefit so greatly from that. But I, of course, had to ask her, so Barbara, do you have beautiful gardens at home? I can only imagine. And she was saying that at one point in time, you had, 5 different flower beds?
Yes, 5 different flower gardens. And my wife is an amazing woman, because one day she went out and she bought a bunch of pipes and liquid glue and nozzles, and she put a complete sprinkler system from the house to all her gardens.
What?
Yep. And
Seriously?
she did such a good job. Some of her friends said, "Could you do mine?" And she did.
Aww. And that's the heart and soul of our volunteer base. It really is. And you've had some really great experiences. Anything else that you wanted to share?
Not really. I just want to thank, it's not a one-man operation. You just can't do it. We have 20 dedicated volunteers, and they all love what they do. And the nice part about being a gardener is you work hard, you step back, and you can see the results immediately, and it's very, very satisfying. I love to go up in the Franklin Square Lounge on the second floor and look down at that plaza, and boy, I tell you, I really feel like $1 million when I see that, because it is pretty. It's a lot of work, but it's pretty. And so many people stop by and say, "You're doing a great job," and they just love it. And we're seeing more and more people coming there during the summer and having their lunches. They love it, and it's great.
It is great, and it is beautiful. And I have to tell you, from a marketing perspective, it has dressed up every exterior photo that we take of the building. We've been able to use photos of our theater on the cover of many annual reports in the past, our holiday brochure this year, lots and lots of places. In the plantings and the plaza in the front, it frames the whole theater in a way that it just wouldn't be the same if it wasn't there.
Well, it's the heart of the theater district. That's the way you have to look at it.
And so how long have you been in this area?
I was born at Fairlawn Hospital back in 1935.
1935. So Richard is a very spunky person over here, and he has seen a lot of changes in Worcester. Yep. And you probably remember the theater before it was a theater, back when it was a movie house.
I was taken there by my mother at the Los Poli, or the Palace, in 1938.
Wow.
I remember being taken there to see Gone with the Wind,
That must have been phenomenal.
Pinocchio,
Fun.
and a lot of Disney movies. And I tell you, when you went there, it was really something. There was a lot of theaters in Worcester, probably 15 plus theaters. And when you went to the Palace, you knew you were being taken somewhere.
Isn't that
and it
great?
really, when you go in and look at it, it's basically the way it was when Sylvester Poli made it that way.
Well, we've definitely come a long way in the restoration. Of course, there are some details we still need to complete, but it really has been a wonderful transformation, renovation, restoration. Tell me, what did you think when you originally heard that the theater was going to be opening?
Well, I was excited. And when I actually went in there, I was just, I'm lost for words. Because when I went in there and I looked around, what you people did is incredible. And the monster, what you did with the monster.
The monster?
You never heard?
What do you mean the monster?
The monster. Well, the mighty Wurlitzer, when it was a theater organ, was called the monster.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yes. And it had a live program on WTAG on Monday night from 8:30 to 9, and people could either go to the theater and make requests or call them in.
Wow.
And the organist would do it. Oh, yeah, that was a big thing back then. Because don't forget, there was only like 1,500 Wurlitzer organs made.
Right.
And the gentleman that made this thing was made from 60 boxes of old parts from Wurlitzer organs that were up to 60 years old.
It's amazing. It truly is.
It is. Anyone that hasn't gone to the theater and witnessed that organ, I mean, it just takes your breath away.
It sure does. So do you get a chance to actually enjoy any of the shows, Richard?
Yes, I do. We're season members. So we've been since 5 years ago. We have season tickets for all the Broadway shows.
I love our Broadway subscribers. Thank you for listening to my marketing talk and responding to those shows. We love the subscribers, so you're also members.
All members, and next weekend is the Cirque holidays, and we're looking forward to that.
And then you've also got A Christmas Carol. So what's your favorite thing outside of the garden about the theater?
I would say the people. The volunteers are all great. The staff is very dedicated, very professional. Troy does a great job. He brings in fabulous shows. I can't speak highly enough. We have brought so many of our friends. They have joined. They have become members. They bring people in. People come in to the Hanover Theater from Boston.
Absolutely.
And the first time, find out that they can park right across the street for $10. They say that's usually what they give for a tip.
That's right.
And I said, and the shows are just the high caliber, just as if Boston, and they come back. And they tell their friends. And that's why every year more and more people come to the Hanover Theater.
Absolutely. Well, and again,
if I hit Powerball, I'm going to give you a big check.
All right. Let's all keep our fingers crossed for Richard LaPlant and the Powerball. So again, I thank you so much for your service, your dedication, all of the volunteers. It really makes a huge difference for all of us here in Worcester, not just in the theater, but driving down the road, you see the difference. Walking down the street in the middle of the day, you see the difference. On the weekend, when there aren't even shows going on, I'm one of those people that like to eat my lunch in the plaza now. Always. If I can be outside, that's the place to be. So thank you for helping to make our city more beautiful, the theater more beautiful, and improving the quality of life for all of us. We really appreciate that. I also want to thank all of our board of directors. We just had a very successful annual meeting. And of course, their hard work definitely pays off for all of us. The staff at the Hanover Theater, you're right. I work with the best group of people you all could ever imagine. There's not one person, as one of our chairs said, who isn't in love with the theater. And that's true from the maintenance and the facilities guys all the way up to the chairman of the board, because every single person, you have to be in love in order to do it.
Right, and for those listening that have not gone to the Hanover Theater, please go, because as soon as you walk inside, all you're going to say is, wow.
Absolutely. So come and check out our website, thehanovertheater.org. If you are on Facebook, Like us on Facebook. You'll get special offers about promotions and deals and discounts. Think about joining as a member for early access to tickets. Also, follow us on LinkedIn. Follow us through our weekly emails that we send out. That's how you'll find out when the new shows are announced and when they're going on sale. Of course, we always update our website. So again, that's thehanovertheater.org. There's information on there about how to volunteer, as well as how to support different programs at the theater. And I also want to thank our friends here at WCRN. Sherman is the power behind the scenes who really helps to make us sound good every single solitary week. We appreciate the magic he does. We also appreciate what Chris does for us, the general manager, and the opportunity to be here on the air speaking with you. It's truly remarkable. I don't know, in working with theaters across the country, any other theater that has this opportunity. We appreciate the fact that you all are listening to us talk about what happens behind the scenes. We totally appreciate that as well. All in all, we're getting ready for Thanksgiving and feeling the love and thanks for everybody. So tune in next week as we continue behind the scenes at the Hanover Theater. Check out our upcoming events on thehanovertheater.org, and we will see you all at the theater.
Thanks for listening to Behind the Scenes at the Hanover Theater with your host, Lisa Condit. Make sure to join us again next Sunday morning here on AM 830 WCRN.